What is your name?
My name is Nick Mckeown, and when I play under the name of Nick. Simple name, N-I-K-K. Simple person, really.
Why you play your drum?
Yeah, I started off as a drummer back in 1980. You probably won't remember 1980, I don't know, but I was a drummer for 4 years, and I started off in a band called the Urban Warriors, which was like quite a big local band at the time, like a tribal punk band. And then a year later I formed a band called A Prayer Before Birth, who were like a gothic Susie and the Banshees type band. And then after 4 years of drumming, I decided I got fed up of playing other people's songs, and I wanted to write songs, and I wanted to try and create the sound. So I started to play the guitar, and after I learned the guitar, I started writing my own songs and performing under the name of Nick. Just had my own record label called So Romantic Records and released some singles and an album off that. And then I just continued playing on my own, recording and playing.
What is your first single?
Right, my first single was in 1982 with a band called Prayer Before Birth, which I was just drumming on. But a few years later, I released my first solo single under the name of Nick, and that was called A Song From The Heart. And it had a song called Sandy's Smile on the other side, which was the second song I ever wrote. So 1986 was the first one on my own record label as well, So Romantic Records. Not my biggest hit, mine, because that came a year later with a song called Is There a Reason, which has become a firm classic with the fans. And you're laughing. And you think I'm winding you up, yeah?
What was the first band?
First band was Urban Warriors, which were like a tribal punk band, 1980, and they were had quite a big following. Could have really done something and was going to release a single and everything, but the band just kind of imploded, you know, sort of like egos started to get a bit big and that, and from being great friends we ended up not being such good friends. But that's all by the by, that's a long time ago. So it was the Urban Warriors, and now I was kicked out of that band and I was a bit disappointed about that, but looking back it was probably the best thing that ever happened, because from that I went on to do better things. So I'm quite happy with how it all has gone.
What is the song or releasing or what about?
Right, the songs I'm releasing, it's a double A-side single, and it's called The Way I Live, and it's going to have another song on it called Brightest Star. And they're both, in effect, both new songs, but The Way I Live, I wrote the words for The Way I Live in 1987, but I never ever put them to music. I always liked the words, but I never ever put them to any music. And it was just by mucking around, I found a bit of music about 6 months ago, and then they fitted perfect with the song, and I put that song together. So in effect, it's a new song that's a little bit old, if you know what I mean. And it's about basically, you know, like in relationships sometimes when you're trying to kind of maybe, say if you're trying to find a girlfriend or something, but you feel a little bit inferior because you don't have the flash car, you don't have all the money, you don't really have the job and stuff, and you just want people to accept you for who you are. And the way I kind of say it is like, if you can't accept me for who I am, even though I haven't got the money, the car, the job, I don't want to know who you are. So basically, this is me. If you don't like it, tough. So that's that song. Brightest Star was probably the song that started all this again, because I hadn't done anything for nearly 20 years, and I didn't want to do anything again. And then I lost my dad, and I struggled with that. And then all of a sudden from that, I felt the only way I could cope was there was words coming into my head, and I started writing again. Tried not to, because I never wanted to do it again, because I thought, I've done it so many times. But then all these words started coming in, all these ideas, and then I found myself being able to cope with losing my dad, and I found myself in a better place. And then from that I started writing new songs, and it just all snowballed. And then I got the kind of, I enjoyed doing it again, and I probably never enjoyed playing music more than what I do now. So that's without that song's probably the reason why I'm actually sitting in this chair. So they're both important songs, but that one's like really special.
What favorite food?
I like lasagna, porridge. I like jelly babies. I'm a simple person, I told you. Right.
What is music background?
Well, musical background, I suppose, is what you grew up listening to. I'd like to say I grew up listening to people like Bowie, the Velvet Underground, and Lou Reed and all that cool stuff. But I didn't come from there because I was a little bit late for that. I came from like the world of the Rubettes, Shawaddy Waddy, Slade, the Bay City Rollers, all them bands that everybody would be too embarrassed to mention that they loved at the time. But they were the bands I loved as a kid. I loved pop music, which is probably why I feel like I play pop music, because I've always loved great melodies, great tunes, great fun. From there, I got into the Who. Just before punk came out, I got into the Who. Then when punk came out, I got into the punk scene, started going to see bands in 1977 like The Clash, The Ramones, Stranglers, Damned. Got into that and was pretty much a watcher for 2-3 years and listened to bands when they said anybody can get up and do it. And then I used to knock around with a group of punks and we decided we'd have our own band. We had no instruments, well, couldn't even play, but we decided then and then we were a band. We sat around a table at a fall gig and I was a drummer, and I walked out of that gig feeling like I was somebody. I was the drummer in a band, even though I hadn't seen a drum kit, sat behind a drum kit. And for about 2 or 3 weeks before we could get any drums, I was a drummer and everybody wanted to know us because I was a drummer, but I hadn't even seen a drum kit. But that's the great thing about music. You can be what you want to be. You can be somebody, even if you're not.
What is your favourite football?
Well, as a kid growing up, football was everything to us. Newcastle United was what I lived for. I loved Newcastle United. The team all through the 70s. Super Mac was probably the greatest influence back then. I used to get on the field and I used to think I was Malcolm McDonald. And that's probably why I did score a lot of goals when I used to play as a kid, because I believed I was him. And George Best as well. I love George Best. And to me, that's what football was about, entertainers. I mean, football's moved on, but the entertainers have gone. The great Rodney Marshes and Stan Bowles and all them entertainers. But you can't change what it is. It's a different world, different game. But I was lucky enough to actually see what I regard as the real footballers. Well, as I said before, the reason for playing was after my dad died and that song came in my head. It did give us a reason to kind of play again, because I felt I had something to say. Whereas for the last, as I say, 18, 19 years or so, I've had nothing to say. I've just been doing things like going to work, doing my business, had my kids and what have you, just doing other things. But then all of a sudden I've moved on from the last time I released an album, and the last thing I did was 20 years back and I released an album. I had a lot to say then. But then when you've got nothing to say, I don't believe there's any point in just getting up and just strumming or beating a drum. I've got to have a purpose. And at this moment in my life, I've actually got a purpose again, and I've got things to say, and there's things I want to do with the music and try and move it on and try and be remembered for doing something that was really good. That's what I've always aspired to. Not fame, not money, just trying to write something, play something that somebody will remember and hopefully remember me for, and that's all I'm in it for. So that's it.
Thank you very much. I'm Barry.
Thanks very much. I'm Nick Mckeown.